Very good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our Lunch and Learn series of learning uLaw at your own pace. And I welcome everyone who's joined us today for this particular session. It is certainly a new session, but it's going to be a bit of a continuity from where we left off in our previous session, where we spoke about trust, gender reconciliation, and all of the accounting touch points that you would use specific to a client. Okay, and then in today's session, we discussed that we're going to be talking about the office business accounting, or the business/office accounting aspects of uLaw. As you know, uLaw is a legal accounting practice management software, but it is also a business accounting software. Okay, so with uLaw, our legal professionals don't necessarily need another business accounting software, and we're going to talk about how you would use those key features and functionalities of uLawPractice from a business accounting standpoint. Okay, so that's going to be a big part of our focus for today's session, and I do again request you to use the chat window to ask any questions that you may have. This particular webinar or session will be recorded and made available as part of our Learning uLaw at Your Own Pace playlist in our YouTube channel. Okay, so as you know, or for those who are just starting to get used to uLawPractice, we have the 7 different menu options from dashboard to analytics. And one of the key components or menu options that we use within uLaw is the accounts. Okay, so I'm going to click right into it. Now there's obviously 2 facets to the accounting aspects of uLaw. We have obviously, as part of our document generation, the opportunity for you to generate all of your client-related accounting documents and reports, such as your client's trust ledger, journals, both trust and general. And we also looked in our previous session as to how you would go about doing your trust reconciliation and all of the compliance checklist items that you need to technically record and generate reports as part of your audit requirement or under our compliance panel. And we're actually going to be delivering a full-fledged webinar next week on this particular compliance topic. But we looked at how you would generate a trust ledger, a general ledger, as well as journals that are all specific to clients, either on a monthly basis or specific to a client and a matter as well. Okay. Today we're going to be talking about how do you accomplish business accounting? That is, how do we manage the chart of accounts, as they call it? And how do you ensure that you use uLaw also as a business accounting software for your legal firm? Okay. So on the left-hand side of our accounts menu option, we have the 3 important menu options or buttons. The accounts button obviously talks about all of the existing chart of accounts that have already been created. As part of us creating an account for you, we take the liberty of creating certain basic chart of accounts that we think are necessary, which you can certainly modify as well add to, and we're going to talk about that today. But if you look at the core chart of accounts, regardless of which business accounting software you look at, there are the core chart of accounts that they all look into. You've got your assets, your liabilities, your capital account, your revenue, and your expense account, okay? Now, as part of these chart of accounts, so let's look at them, each one of them individually, so that you get better appreciation for how they're then repurposed within the product. So let's first look at assets and what's under the hood for that. So right within your assets group, you have the trust account, and these are accounts that we have created for you by default as a subscriber to uLaw. We've got our trust account, and those are the placeholder accounts that we use to mirror your real-life bank accounts as well as the bank account transactions. Okay. You can also add, and this being a playground account that I use, many of our clients do use it and do customize it to play around with the product. We obviously have trust account, interest bearing. Some of the transactions also include real estate trust for Terview. In addition to a trust account asset, okay, we've also created certain general bank accounts, and we call them bank accounts. As you can see, we've got a general account, a bunch of credit card accounts as well, and we recommend, if you have the luxury and if you can afford to, do segregate these credit cards. Do have one specifically for your business, and if possible, have another one if your business permits to actually have a separate credit card to be used for paying off disbursements that are client related. So have a credit card for your business and have a credit card if possible for disbursements, and only use it for paying off client disbursements or expenses on client's behalf. And the reason we suggest that is just reconciliation of these general accounts. The fact that it's segregated is far simpler, and it's pretty straightforward, and it helps you reconcile and have a peace of mind between your business numbers as well as specific client numbers. Okay, and if you're in the habit of collecting aeroplane points, you can do so as well. Last but not the least, we've also created placeholder accounts for cash accounts, and these could be accounts that reflect the money that you put in or you spend out of your own pocket, such as the owner's pocket, or could be intermediary placeholder accounts when you're accepting money from your clients as cash. It could be cash retainer, it could be a cash payment. So the top 3 asset accounts that you probably should consider looking at are the trust, bank, and cash accounts. Okay? Now, if you see something here and you can rename them. So, for example, if I click on Roger Moore General Account, you can always click on the title and basically say RM General Account. You can call it the firm's name. And in the nickname, there's a bit of a trick here. If you actually suggest that it's actually a TD, Canada Trust, followed by a colon, and then tell us your bank account number, and we repurpose that information within Form 9As and other forms where this information is pertinent. So you just go ahead and provide that information and click the Save button. And that's going to save that information in your account. Okay. So if you go back to your general account, you see this renamed RM General Account, and you would actually see that right across uLaw everywhere you look to transact using the general account. You can do the same thing by renaming your Visa card. You could say RBC Visa, business credit card, or you could say TD Visa, right? And you can even rename the title as business credit card. And let's click the Save button. Save the accounts. You've got one RBC. Obviously, it doesn't make sense to say TD and RBC Visa. So let's go ahead and rename that. Okay. I've just called it TD Visa Business Credit Card. So if you look at the concept I mentioned about having one business credit card specific to your business and the other one for your clients, let's go ahead and create the other one too. I'll go to Assets, Bank. If you look at the CIBC one, I'll say, all right, CIBC Bank MasterCard. I'll say client disbursements only. Okay? Making it very straightforward. So when you're actually transacting in real life, as well as obviously in real life, you would consider that as a card used for disbursements, and in uLaw, you would reflect that through the appropriate labels. If you wanted to add newer accounts, okay, you could do so by using the Add New Account. The existing accounts lists down all of the existing accounts that we created for you. If you look at liabilities, we've got payables, borrowings, payroll, taxes. We've got capital. We've got the capital that you've invested, the retained earnings, any income distribution that's happened for the year, and any drawings for that year. So these are all the accounts that we've created for you. As far as revenue goes, here's something that we've tried to keep it a little bit more specific to the legal industry. The legal work is one of your revenue streams. So let's assume you're a legal professional and doing legal work as either a paralegal or as a lawyer or any legal profession that you may be in Canada. There's certain areas of practice that you may focus on. Small claims, family, criminal, WSIB, right? So those are the different areas of practice. And this is kind of married to how you represent this information right within your matter. When you actually create a matter, if you look at the legal work, we've got immigration, tribunal, family law. This is the list that you actually see when you generate or create a new matter. Okay? So let's look at this drop-down which says area of practice. This is the same list that you saw in the accounts that we generated for revenue accounts. So here's immigration, your tribunals, family law. So this is exactly the same thing that you see under accounts, under revenue, under legal work. You can modify that. Again, change this to immigration. Click save. And that's going to save the account and rename it. Now, obviously, if you see an account that you don't, if you don't see a specific account that you need, then you can always add it by using the Add New Account. Now, apart from the legal work, as a legal professional, you may actually have revenue streams such as advisory work that you may be doing, right? And you can add those types of revenue streams under those categories, or you may be doing some consultancy. In addition to that, you may be teaching at a college or a university, and there could be many other streams. And you may be having, some part-time work. If you wanted to bring all of that, you are able to do so. Or if you wanted to keep uLaw specific to legal business only, you can do that. If you wanted to combine it with some other interests and revenues that your business earns, you are most definitely able to do that as well. Okay? You've got a consulting, duty counsel, even a disc jockey, crying out loud. And the last chart of account, very important, and regardless of whether you start with the client or not, most of our clients most certainly start with expenses that they need to incur for their businesses, right? It's just like taxes and debt. I mean, expenses have just become an inevitable given as part of starting a business. As a legal professional, I'm sure you would appreciate that one of the first expenses that you would incur is that of the law society's legal fees, right? Membership fees, if you will. And then if you're part of any specific other associations, then maybe the membership fees are on that. There's obviously expenses with regards to opening a business, generating websites, paying for that using either your own money or your business credit card. There's many such expenses, and you can, again, categorize them under these various different sub-accounts, if you will. And one of the most often used sub-accounts of expenses are that of the office expenses, okay? And this being a playground account doesn't do justice to the list, because this is a bit of an extended list of everything that people, our clients, being used and getting very innovative with creating new accounts. But in general, when you create an account with uLaw, we start you off with maybe 6 to 10 basic accounts that you can then rename or add to it. Now, in addition to office expenses, you've got rent and taxes, okay? And you can rename them or even add new to them. So let's say you just started to work with Mattamy as a builder, or maybe you're renting from one of those property management companies and you want to add that to your existing list of expense accounts. Let's do that. So I'll show you how you can add a new account that you don't see in the drop-down list, and that's by using the Add New Account, as the name sounds. And then we ask you, all right, perfect, you want to add a new account. What category or what chart of account are you looking to add this new account in? And then you obviously choose the expense account. And then we say, all right, is there a subcategory within your expense? Because it could be office expenses, client expenses, rent. What would it be? And you're just going to say it's rent and taxes and give it a name. So you could say it's Mattamy management, property management, right? Okay, rent for office. And I'm just going to go ahead and hit save. And save that account. And what you're going to notice is once it's saved, it finds its way under the appropriate subcategory of expenses, rent, and taxes, and you're going to have that available right away. So let's look at your existing accounts now. Go into your expense, rent and taxes. What you didn't see before and what you see now is the Mattamy property management. You click on it, it's got your nickname, it's got the title, and it's ready to be used. And now is how you can start to use these accounts into transactions. And uLaw, just like any other bookkeeping software or business accounting software, the fundamental is the software is trying to catch up or is trying to ensure that it's caught up with all of the real-life transactions that have happened in your life with regards to a bank or otherwise, or is trying to catch up with planned activities that you have in mind. Okay? So it's really trying to the product is trying to catch up with what's happened. Let's keep it simple that way. And if you can find, tools and means of updating uLaw on a regular basis as and when things happen, so really we talk about capturing the moment, to capture the moment and transact it in uLaw just the way you transact it in real life, then we have the ability then to empower you with all the necessary documentation, reporting, and the compliance aspects of your legal business, as well as providing you with insights and analytics that are key indicators of how well you're performing as a business. Okay? Bottom line for any bookkeeping software such as uLaw or a business accounting software such as uLaw is the data, the timely data to be entered. And that's where it comes tricky, because legal professionals, and we appreciate it, you are very busy professionals. There are certain candidates based on their areas of practice and based on just the way you are as a personality and as a character are able to update their uLaw product or bookkeeping software as and when things happen, so we really are able to capture the moment. There are others who do it on a weekly basis, so they don't do it every day. I mean, if you've just had an expense on Monday morning, they don't capture it right away on Monday. They wait for the Saturday morning that weekend and then catch up on all of the expenses, for example, that have happened from Monday to Friday that week. So that's perfect too. And then there are others who do it bi-weekly. Then there's others who do it monthly. There are others who don't do it at all, right? So there's a good spectrum of how users can potentially use uLaw. And there are others who actually could take help of bookkeepers. And this is where it gets where you need extra help, extra hands on deck to help you. Obviously, that comes at a price. And as long as you're willing to pay that price, then obviously the bookkeepers are well-versed. They train themselves in different softwares, and they are available to work with you to ensure they enter the data. Okay? Data entry is key, but how easy is it to enter data, as well as what level of reporting and documentation does the product give you, is really where we believe we differentiate ourselves, and we're well-tuned to provide that, especially for legal professionals in Canada. Okay? So going back, just as a quick recap, so you've got all of your accounts, chart of accounts from assets to expense, and sub-accounts under that. We looked at how you can rename them. Within our bank account, we rename a general account. We also added a business credit card as well as a CIBC Bank MasterCard. Maybe we'll call this client card, client expense. Okay? You can clearly demarcate those credit cards. Now, once we've set up these basic accounts, so this is really where you'd spend a good majority of your time early on setting up uLaw. Okay? Once you've done these very simple steps at the beginning, and this is something that our support staff or onboarding staff can help you with, now comes time to look at how do you enter that data as and when it happens or on a timely manner. Okay? So this is critical, right? So you've set up these accounts. Now real life happens. You have expenses to report. And we're, again, strictly looking at office expenses today because we've already covered how you would manage client expenses. So I'm going to try and show you for some of the varieties of individuals that are out there and how they capture data, the types of tools that we provide to do so on those corresponding ways. One of the first ways, and we spoke about this, and one of the most recommended ways is to capturing an expense immediately as after it happens. So if it happened Monday, you don't have to do it with the next minute. You could, but at least end of the day would be a great starting point, okay? Let's have a look at that. Now, to do so, you would use the blue action button. As you know, within uLaw, the two common words or functionalities that you would come across are the action, just almost like your plus symbol on your iPhone, or a little pen symbol on your Android. It's really how you enter the data or capture the moment. And the document generation are obviously where you generate documents and reports. Okay, so let's capture the moment of that expense. To do so, you go into expense, and we're then asking you what type of expense are you capturing or are you reporting. You're going to be like, it's an office expense. Yeah. So click on it. And then uLaw prompts you, again, to capture the real-life transaction. What happened as part of that office expense? Okay, so let's see, earlier this week, we spoke about capturing that as and when it happens. So let's do it on today. This morning, let's assume, under expenses, you've got office expenses and all the subcategories, right? You've got rent and taxes. If you note, we've got our Mattamy property management. So let's say earlier today, you actually paid Mattamy the rent. Mattamy gave you an invoice, and this was the March 2018 rent. And let's say there was pre-tax, it was about $1,000. We auto-compute tax. Obviously, I've set up Quebec. Let me quickly go in my settings. Taxes and rates. We'll change this to Ontario. We'll save it, saving settings, and then let's quickly jump back into reporting that expense. Okay? Action, expense, office expenses. I'll say for today, I'm going to choose rent and taxes. Mattamy property management. Invoice number, March 2018 rent. I'll say $1,000 pre-tax. It's going to auto-compute for Ontario at 13%. It's going to auto-compute it. We're going to capture taxes separately so that uLaw can then report very easily on your HST payable and receivable, combine it, and tell you in a snapshot of how much of HST you owe the government or the government owes you. Okay? And very important, so these are all the, what we call, are the true flavors of that transaction. What happened in that transaction? When did it happen? Okay? Very important. What was the transaction for? There's a rent specific to Mattamy. Let's put a description so that it's a little bit more explanatory. Then, important aspect or flavor of that transaction is what was the amount? How much was that expense for? Was there any taxes that was part of that expense? You've captured all the essence and flavor of that transaction so far. Last but not the least, a few more aspects of that transaction include, all right, who do you pay this to, and how did you pay it? You could say I paid it to Mattamy Property Management. Now the concept comes about, how did you pay for it? So let's assume you paid it using a credit card. Okay, I'm just going to make that assumption. I'm going to say credit card. Actually, I'll use the TD Gold credit card. And let's say your bank provided that to you. You just paid on the 16th for your March rent, $1,000 plus tax, $1,130 using credit card. You paid it to Mattamy Property. Maybe you went online and did that. Okay? Maybe that was one expense. You can either hit submit, and this is going to automatically save that transaction. And the beauty of uLaw is that it automatically does the subledgering too. If you go into your TD Gold credit card, you would notice that there is the credit of the March 2018 rent. Okay? And the transaction that just happened. You can always click on it, and if you want to make change, so maybe it was not $1,000, it was $1,100, you can unlock it, change it to $1,100. It's going to change the taxes, obviously, and resubmit it. It's as simple as that. Clicking the amount and unlocking the transaction and reposting the ledger. So very simple. Hitting action, expense, office expense, capturing it as and when it happened. You captured the rent and taxes, Mattamy, the amount, what taxes, who you paid it to, how you paid it for, and a method of payment. Okay? Now let's do another transaction. Expense, office expense, and maybe you purchased a laptop, and this happened earlier this week. So on the 12th, you can call it printing and stationery. We do have office supplies as a category. You could have software, stationery, so you can create your own set of accounts. This is really where you can differentiate yourself because each business is different. Okay? Software expense, or maybe this is really not software. I'm just going to call it, okay, let's call it a computer purchase. Add a new account. Add new account to my expense. Office expense. Laptop. Okay? I can give it a nickname if I like. I'm just going to hit save. I'm going to save that account, and it's going to obviously be made available. And let's go and look at that. I'll say action, expense, office expense. This time it's not a rent, it's actually an office expense. And at the last, we have the laptop expenses. And I'll say Microsoft Surface. Purchase. Maybe it's $1,500, right? It's for $195 of tax. And let's say you paid this to Walmart. Again, you use your credit card. And the reason why I'm using Gold credit card is because I know I've already reconciled, and all of these transactions will show up in my reconciliation for you to look at. I'll use credit card again, then provide the credit card transaction given to me by my bank. Now let's assume just after the purchase at Walmart, you actually had another expense to report. So maybe you went to have coffee, and it's an office expense, and you went to Starbucks to have that coffee. And you actually want to report that expense right away. You don't want to re-enter all those steps again. You can go ahead and just click on Save an Expense, which means it's going to save once you submit and create another expense screen. So let's go ahead, and that's the reason for Save an Expense. Let me hit Submit. It's going to submit that expense, and it's going to open up the same screen again So that you can basically say office expense, meals, Starbucks, coffee, say $4. That's a lot of coffee. $4 and paid to same thing, credit card. And hit submit. So that's really the essence of the save and expense, is that you can just have that checked on, and if you're just catching up on the weekly expenses on that Saturday morning, you can do so one after the other. Okay, and this is something that you can do, your bookkeeper can do it. Whoever is doing the data entry are going to be using the screens, or these set of screens, to enter all the data related to their office expenses. Okay? If I were to look at my current month of my credit cards, here are all the transactions. That was the Microsoft Surface purchase. That was the March rent, right? And then that was the $4.52 Starbucks coffee. Now, let's look at yet another way that we allow you to capture data or these expenses or these data entries. This is one thing at a time, right? Now, another way of doing so is the same button, action. You got expense. Now you've got a batch import as an option. Now, this can be specifically important if you are the type of legal professional who leaves a shoebox with your bookkeeper, and they actually go through this on a monthly or a weekly basis to update it into your legal accounting software on your behalf. So we're going to ask, all right, if you have that shoebox, how many transactions are in that box? So maybe it's 5 or 10. Let's say it's 5. You're going to go ahead and say, all right, I want to do a batch import. And this goes using the typical tab interface. Same information. So you could change the date. You can say on the 13th, I had lunch at Moxie's, $30. Take an action, office expense, and you can say score credit card. If you have a transaction number, you can put it in or just leave it empty, because it just makes it more meaningful. Hit submit. And then you can tab and use the second. Again, this is just a different data entry format. One was just going one at a time, and here's where you can actually add all of these together. Okay? You can say dinner at Milestones. And change the date. So this just gives you a better perspective of being able to add multiple office expense entries using one screen, and that's the bottom line. Okay? $3, take action, office expenses, and breakfast at Starbucks could be another $10. All of that using your credit card, mind you. Okay? Now, once you've entered all that data, now we're going to look at the last option that we give you to enter or import data. So we spoke about individuals who do it on a daily basis, and we looked at individual data entries. We looked at individuals who do it on a weekly basis. We looked at batch import of those transactions, the multiple transactions at the same time. And now we're going to showcase to you for those individuals who maybe do it on a monthly basis. Okay? So on a monthly basis, what you can do is basically download your entire credit card statement, let's say for the month of March. Let's say everything has happened on the 1st of April. You're going into your bank account, so maybe it's TD Visa, right? You're logging into your online bank account, and you download your monthly Visa statement as a CSV file. So you can download as a PDF, but certain banks do give you the option to download them as a CSV file. And what we do is we then import that CSV file. So to do so, you go back into Accounts, click on Action, and this is an administrator function because you don't get to do this on a daily basis. This happens maybe once a month, once every couple of months if you're going this route. Or you can do this on a weekly basis too, but it's more so suited for those who have to do it for a lot of transactions for an extended period of time. So I would go into Administrator, and you see the option of importing a bank statement. And I would choose, and you can choose whether you want to do this import for your general account, for multiple business credit cards. You can even do so over your own cash account, okay? But I'm going to choose specifically the TD Gold credit card because that's the credit card we've been using. And I'm going to choose, again, we support various institutions. And I'm just going to go ahead and say it was a TD. And I will then pause, download that March Visa statement from my TD account, and I would go ahead and download as a CSV file. I'll call it February, but I'm just going to go ahead and give you that account anyways, and hit upload. What happens is when you hit the upload button, it goes in, looks at that entire CSV file, it looks at all the transactions, and we know what different templates different institutions provide you with, and we bring all of those transactions right from the 2nd up to the 21st, okay? And let's say there was this Starbucks that happened. So these are all the transactions that have happened. Obviously, you do. This individual lawyer has a lot of stuff to do with Starbucks. Let me just go ahead and take that same action. And now I can say it's an office expense. So instead of you having to enter all that data, you're just going to take it from your bank and just go ahead and hit submit. Okay? So that's the third way of how you would enter your office expense data into uLaw. Okay? Now, once you've done all of this, so what's the essence of doing all of this? One is it makes it easier for you to catch up on all the data entry that is required on a regular basis. And why you do that is so that you can reconcile your accounts when your memory is fresh. You put it into the software and reconcile your accounts. And that's the last step that we're going to be doing today before we wrap up the session. So you know when I looked at my TD Gold credit card, all the different transactions that we entered in the month of March. We looked at lunch, dinner, we looked at the rent, Starbucks coffee, right? Let me go ahead and do my reconciliation just to show you how easy it was to bring in those business expenses. Okay? To do so, you again go into Accounts, Document Generation, Compliance, and here at the bottom you have your General Reconciliation. And you then have the option of choosing which accounts are you looking to reconcile. And I'm going to choose the TD Gold credit card. Choose the date. So if you're doing this on a weekly basis, so let's say today is the day I'm going to reconcile my entire month of March so far, and I'm going to choose the 16th. When you choose that, there's some interesting color combinations that you see here. So what uLaw does is it brings all the transactions that you have entered so far in uLaw from the beginning of time till the 16th of March and starts to report those transactions that have not yet been reconciled, right? So you haven't necessarily mapped these transactions with your real bank transactions and told us that, yes, these two happened in real life. One, to your bookkeeping software, and for us to recognize that this really happened. But interestingly enough, if you looked at the first record here, if you looked at the Starbucks $12 and cent, you see that it's highlighted in green. And the reason we highlight it to you in green is so that we can easily identify and tell you that, hey, you have already done this through your bank import. Remember, we imported the bank statement and we included this transaction. So we're just highlighting to you that this transaction came right out of your bank statement, so you can almost blindfoldedly go ahead and click the checkbox, okay? And you can be rest assured the dates would match because the date truly came from the bank. Whereas if you look at some of the other transactions, you may want to change the date. So maybe the lunch at Moxie's happened, you reflected on the 13th, but in the bank only reflected on the 14th. And if these transactions match, you can go ahead and click them. So the bottom line is we made office expense data entry simple. You can categorize them, have different ways in which you can enter the data, and once you've done so on a timely and regular basis, you can reconcile these accounts. And all you have to do is tell us what the balance was as per your bank. Okay. And when those numbers match, you can always do a weekly preview. You can do a preview and hit the preview button. And what we provide you is, again, we recommend doing maybe weekly previews or daily previews and then doing one monthly reconciliation report that makes it easier on you as well as your staff. Okay? There you go. Look at all of the transactions that you have reconciled so that you're at peace now. You've caught up with all the transactions that have happened till date, and you're just going to wait for the month end to actually do your monthly reconciliation. So this is just a preview for your own records. So as a quick recap, today's session was to quickly highlight to you as to how you can manage office expenses within uLaw. We looked at how you can first and foremost create the chart of accounts right within our accounts. We created a new category called the Anatomy Property Management. We then looked at how you can rename existing accounts. You can add to existing accounts using the Add New Account button. And finally, we looked at how you can use the Action button. There was 3 different varieties in which how you could report or capture the actual data entry of the transactions related to your office expense. And the first, we did how you could capture them one at a time. And there was another option to do a batch import, all under the Action button, where you can do multiple entries at the same time. And third most powerful option was the ability for you to import your entire bank statement into uLaw so that data entry is a breeze, and then you can then, last but not the least, do your weekly, daily, weekly, bi-weekly, and monthly reconciliation of those general accounts so that you can be very confident about your business numbers, especially the expenses. Okay? So with this, I'm going to wrap up today's session, and we're going to have another session the following week, and so on and so forth. And the purpose of these Lunch and Learn, learning uLaw at your own pace, is so that you can review them, get a better feel for the product, and start to use it and maximize the use of it for its fullest potential. Okay? So once again, I want to thank everyone who's joined in today. And please do use our email to ask any questions that you may have with regards to either this session or our series in general, and we'll be more than happy to respond back. Okay? Thank you very much, and we look forward to seeing you in our next session.